Alright, in this video we'll be looking at solving two-step equations, and as the name implies, these equations will require two steps in order to come up with their solutions. So if we take a look at the first one here, 2x plus 4 is equal to 6. Again, the idea here is to try and figure out what value can we replace x with so this results in a true statement. So let's go ahead and begin. Just as we did with the one-step equations, what we're going to do is work backwards or undo things. Got to do the opposite operations. So the first thing I'm going to do is the opposite of adding 4. And the opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4. And remember, we do this to both sides. So if I subtract 4, I'm left with 2x is equal to, if I subtract 6 minus 4, 6 minus 4 is 2. Now I'm not done yet. I've got to do my second step. Notice I'm trying to solve for x, and right now I have two x's, and I just want to know what x or 1x is equal to. So in order to do that, since they're multiplying by 2, I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to divide by 2. So that leaves me with x, and if I divide 2 divided by 2, I'm left with a 1. Therefore, the solution to this equation is 1. Now I do want to point out that we can still check our work here. Notice that if I replace x with a 1, 2 times 1 would be a 2. And 2 plus 4, if I add 2 plus 4, it results in a 6. So it still results in a true statement. Alright, let's try number 2. Again, the first thing we're going to do is the opposite of adding 6, and that's subtracting 6. So if I subtract 6, I have 5x is equal to 10, because 16 minus 6 is 10. The second thing I'm going to need to do is the opposite of multiplying by 5, and that's to divide by 5. So if I divide by 5, 10 divided by 5 would give me a 2. Therefore, the solution to this equation is 2. Once again, notice we can check our work here. If I replace x with a 2, 5 times 2 would give us a 10. And if I add 10 plus 6 still equals a 16. So I know I've got the correct solution here. Okay, moving on to number 3. I need to solve this equation, and the first thing I'm going to do is the opposite of subtracting 7, which is to add 7. So 8 plus 7 is going to be a 15. Now what I'm going to do is the opposite of multiplying by 3, which is dividing by 3. And if I divide by 3, 15 divided by 3 is 5. Therefore, my solution to this equation is 5. Once again, I'm just going to real quickly check my work here. If I replace x with a 5, notice 3 times 5 would end up being a 15. And then if I subtract 7 from that 15, 15 minus 7 still equals to 8. So we know we have the correct solution. Alright, let's take a look at number 4. Here we have x plus 1 divided by 3 is equal to a 2. Now notice we're taking the x plus 1 and taking that whole thing and dividing it by 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is take care of that division of 3. And the way we're going to do that is by multiplying by 3. Remember, the opposite of dividing is multiplying. So now we have x plus 1 is equal to 2 times 3 is going to give me a 6. Now I can do the second step, and that second step is to subtract 1. And if I subtract 1, 6 minus 1 is going to be a 5. Therefore, the solution to this equation is 5. Once again, notice if I check my work here, if I replace x with a 5, 5 plus 1 would be a 6. And if I divide that 6 by 3, notice that I do end up with a 2. So again, I know I have the correct solution here. Alright, let's take a look at a few more. Number 5, 5x minus 7 is equal to a negative 2. First thing we're going to start off with is the opposite of subtracting 7 is adding 7. Remember, we're doing this to both sides. So negative 2 plus 7. Negative 2 plus 7 is equal to a positive 5. The next thing I'm going to do is the opposite of multiplying by 5, which is dividing by 5. And if I divide 5 by 5, 5 divided by 5 would give us a 1. Therefore, the solution to this equation is 1. Real quick, I'm going to check my work here. If I replace x with a 1, if I multiply 5 times 1, that gives me a 5. And if I subtract 5 minus 7, 5 minus 7 does equal to a negative 2. So I know I have the correct answer here. Alright, so let's go on to number 6. First thing we're going to start with is subtracting 3. So here we're left with 1/5 x is equal to 4 minus 3. And of course 4 minus 3 is 1. Now notice what I have here is 1/5 times x, and that's equal to 1. Now the opposite of multiplying by 1/5 would be dividing by 1/5. Now I could go ahead and divide by 1/5. However, it makes things a little easier if I simply multiply by the reciprocal. And when I say reciprocal, I'm talking about taking the fraction and just flipping it upside down. Okay, so that's what I mean when I say reciprocal. Just remember, we are doing this to both sides. And what that's going to allow me to do is cancel out the fractions, leaving me with an x. And if I come over here, all I'm doing is multiplying 1 times 5. And if I multiply 1 times 5, I get a 5. Therefore, my solution to number 6 is 5. Now notice if I check my work here real quick, if I replace x with a 5, 1/5 times 5 would equal to a 1. And if I add 1 plus 3, notice that I do get my 4. So this is the correct answer here. Alright, so let's go ahead and go on to the next one here. Here we have 8 minus 3x is equal to 14. The first thing we're going to do on this one is subtract 8 from both sides. So that's gone. Negative 3x is equal to, if I subtract 14 minus 8, 14 minus 8 is going to be a 6, positive 6. The next thing I'm going to need to do is divide by negative 3. And 6 divided by negative 3 would result in a negative 2. Therefore, my solution is negative 2. I'll check the work real quick. If I replace that x with a negative 2, a negative 3 times a negative 2 would result in a positive 6. And if I add 8 plus 6, notice that I do get 14. So again, we know we got the correct answer here. And the last one, 2x plus 7 is equal to 5. We're going to start by subtracting 7. So if I subtract 5 minus 7 would be a negative 2. Now I'm going to divide by 2. That's the opposite of multiplying by 2. And a negative 2 divided by a positive 2 results in a negative 1. Therefore, my solution is negative 1. And I'm going to check my work again. 2 times a negative 1 would be a negative 2. And a negative 2 plus 7. Negative 2 plus 7 would equal to a positive 5. So we do have the correct answer here. So this is how we solve two-step equations.